Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today I wanted to take a look at the first 18 picks in the 2025 NFL Draft. We are going to be doing what is basically a first-round mock draft. I will not be making picks 19 through 32 just because we don't know where teams are going to fall yet. The games haven't been played. But for all you guys, right, most of you are Jaguars fans watching this, I assume. And we want to get an idea of where a player is going to go, what players are going to be on the board, how could this really play out, and just an idea of what this draft is really going to look like now that we know the official order for over half the picks. So, with that all said, we're going to jump into this. And look, it's an interesting class because you've got some quarterbacks at the top of this thing that really aren't to the caliber that sorry for all the coughing. I'm still kind of sick here. They're not to the caliber you're used to, right? This is not a class that has the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May top three, and then still having like Michael Penix and Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy as other options. There's really, to me, one guy I would bet on, another guy who will probably go at the very top as well, and a third guy we really don't know about yet. And maybe someone else declares. We'll talk about that. But you've got that for the quarterback class. And then the rest of it, you've got some exciting players. You've got some really talented, like, blue chip type of prospects. But a lot of these first round picks are players that should probably be going a little bit later. Sorry, a little bit later. So that's going to really, really impact things here. And I think you're going to see a lot of teams not want to move up because of that, because the value really isn't there. So if a team is to, move down from one of these top 10 selections, probably not getting as much as you usually would. So maybe there's an opportunity there, but they might not want to do that at the same time. If you're getting lowballed, you're probably just going to stay put, try to take a top player. So let's go ahead, let's jump in. We don't have any trades in this. We're just going to go pick by pick. I didn't think any trades made a ton of sense either, because I can't confidently say any teams would want to move down here. There's a conversation perhaps with the Browns, just because I think like the Raiders, Raiders would probably make a call if Shadur Sanders is there. The Giants are in a situation where they desperately need a quarterback. They may not like the third option. So is it possible that the Browns the Browns move out of that pick? Yeah, it definitely is. But I can't confidently say they would be willing to do that, given they might like the quarterback that's there, and they desperately need one. They arguably need one more than the Tennessee Titans. Once again, I apologize for all this coughing. It's getting annoying. I've been sick for like almost 2 weeks. Let's go ahead and jump into this. So, Tennessee Titans. There are rumors right now that Cam Ward is the quarterback they favor. Now, the way this works, we'll probably hear the opposite within a week. It'll all be unknown, and then we'll figure out shortly before the draft what they'll actually do. And I think it is a debate this year. There is no, I would say, like, clear QB1 in this class to most people. For me, this would be Cam Ward. And that is the quarterback they apparently prefer right now. I think it's a really good fit for a lot of these top teams. I think he's a guy who can come in and be able to deal with a situation that's not always ideal. Someone who's uber confident, that's just going to go out and play his ass off. And yeah, you're going to get mistakes, right? That's part of his game. He does some boneheaded things. But ultimately, you have a quarterback with a lot of upside and someone that a lot of people are comparing to Jordan Love for that reason. That's what you see with Jordan Love. I mean, you get great play a lot of the time, but you go back to last year when they're in the playoffs and, he throws a pretty disgusting pick to finish the season. So are you willing to take that kind of player up here? Given how Jordan Love's done, I think that you could definitely justify that. And I really don't think that Brian Callahan gives a crap about Will Levis, to be honest. So, for me, this is going to be Cam Ward, and this is a little more predictive than perhaps what I would do for all this. You'll see that with the Jaguars pick as well. So we're going to take Cam Ward first overall. So this is where the conversation kind of opens up. The Cleveland Browns. Because if I'm the Browns here, I'm either auctioning this pick off for a haul or I'm taking Travis Hunter. This is my honest choice. And I would understand that this next year you're probably not going to have a quarterback you love, but I wouldn't take anyone on the board at this point. Now, with that said, are the Browns going to take a quarterback? I think they will. They need a quarterback. They could end up really liking Shedeur Sanders. Even if Sanders goes to number one, I think Cam Ward's an even better fit for them. Because that is a guy that I see being able to overcome that type of situation. So I think this is going to be a quarterback. Now, the question with Shedeur Sanders is he going to play with this team? Is his dad going to let him go there? And all that stuff. Because there's been all the talk about, will Deion Sanders allow his son to play for this team or that team? And there was a rumor that he would not allow him to play for the Browns or the Giants. And this was actually shut down by Deion himself. Now, we'll see what happens. You never know. But my understanding right now from that would be that the Cleveland Browns are an option for Shedeur Sanders. You keep in mind as well, I mean, Kevin Stefanski, he's still going to be there. He was a head coach of the year guy like a couple years ago. So it's entirely possible that this could work out for him in Cleveland. And I think they would take this kind of bet at this point. Because with Deshaun Watson, you haven't got anything out of him. He gets hurt every year. And at this point, like, it's sunk costs. Like, you don't need to keep burying yourself because you made the investment. It's just a loss at this point. I think the restructure for them is probably more so just trying to make it manageable for the future rather than sitting here and saying, this is our way of keeping him on the roster and having him be the starter. I think he's just going to kind of stick around for the rest of that contract or be like Daniel Jones, maybe get cut halfway through like 2026 in his final year. So Shedeur Sanders is going to be the pick here. I do think it's worth mentioning that if Drew Aller were to declare, because that is still on the table right now, you could debate. I mean, he could even go number one in this class. That is possible. But if not, and he declares for this draft, he grew up just outside of Cleveland. Like, that is a quarterback that they could really like. And I think if you're the Giants here, if Drew Aller were on the board, it makes a lot of sense for them. Because you look at Brian Daboll and who he's worked with throughout his career. He had a lot of success with Josh Allen in Buffalo. And for what Drew Aller is, he's a very similar prospect to what Josh Allen was coming out of college. So I think that would be a phenomenal fit for the Giants. And so I think if Drew Aller declared, this kind of makes things to where a lot of these teams feel more comfortable at the top. Unfortunately for the Giants here, you're in a situation where there's not really going to be the quarterback available in free agency. Sam Darnold is basically the only one that could be available, then could maybe be worth a damn. So that's your option. If he even makes it there. I don't think he does. And now you're sitting here in the draft. You have two teams above you that are already set on their players. I think ultimately, if you're the Giants, you got two options here. You can take the great player in Travis Hunter and really set up the organization for a lot of success long term once they get a quarterback. Problem is, you're not going to be there for them. You're not going to keep your job. You're going to be out of the building next year because they don't have a lot of patience left. That's what John Mara said, made that very clear. So that's one option. I think that's the better option for the team. It's not the best option for the people running the team. The other option is you got one quarterback. I think you take at this point in the first round. That's Jalen Milroe. Now, Milroe, I don't like taking him at 3 here. It would not be what I would do. But he is someone who has a lot of tools, has a lot of upside. I think when I look at him, he doesn't have all the same tools as like Anthony Richardson, but he is a very toolsy prospect in a somewhat similar way. except Jalen Milroe, I think, is a little more developed of a player than Anthony, because Anthony was, he played 1 year, and he didn't really play that well that year. He just had some moments. So Milroe, I think, is kind of a different version of that. And I think that team is going to convince themselves to do that. If, say, Drew Aller was here, and that's the pick at number 3, I think a team like the Jets could make a lot of sense for Jalen Milroe, because you got Tyrod Taylor there. He can be your bridge guy. He's going to be a somewhat similar style of quarterback. That would be a really good person to mentor him under. So I think that's what might end up happening, because I do think Aller could declare, and I would lean slightly towards it right now. It's just not the case, so we're not putting this into this mock draft. But Jalen Milroe would be the pick for me at number 3 for the Giants. Not what I would do, but what I think would have to happen, because, well, what other option do you have? You hope he falls and you pick him at the end of the first, you trade up. I don't know if that works. Steelers might take him. Jets might take him at number 7, so you can't really bet on that. Now, getting to pick number 4, this is easy if you're the Patriots. I know that there was a lot of talk about, can you trade down for a haul? You're not going to be able to really do that at this point, because a team's moving up for Travis Hunter, and there's some value in that, but it's not the same value as what you're going to get from the quarterback tax. Even though personally, how I would value these positions, it would be about the same. So realistically, you're not moving out of this pick if you're New England. You could use another corner. You could use another wide receiver. You need a wide receiver 1 really bad. So get Travis Hunter in there. You can let him play a lot of snaps. I think at this point for me, everyone generally just agrees that it's going to be impossible for him to play full-time. Maybe that ends up being the case, but I would do it until the wheels fall off. I would give him that opportunity. So Travis Hunter would be the pick here. You need talent on that team really bad, and they just don't have that. There's very few cornerstones on both sides of the ball, and this gives you a superstar and a face of the franchise type of player to go along with Drake May. It's hard to miss on this, so that's going to be the pick here. Now, pick number 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. See, if this wasn't predictive, and this was what I would do, this would be Abdul Carter. And the reason why is because I think you could find a way to use him. I think you can get him on the field with Trayvon Walker, with Josh Hines-Allen, and I think that he's the best player that's left in the class at this point. He is my number 2 overall prospect. That said, I think it's very unlikely that the Jaguars would make any sort of move like this. So you look at the type of players that they would take. You think at this point, unfortunately, Trent Baalke is probably making this pick probably the next year, and the next year, and the next year. You can hear my anger in that, but that's the way things are right now. To me, it'd be 2 options here that would be on the table. I think it would be Will Johnson. I say this because it's an extremely talented player. He's going to meet the length thresholds, the size thresholds. He's someone who I think can really play any scheme. And he's someone who also fits a really big need for this team. You go back to last year, who were the 2 players it came down to for Jacksonville? Well, it was Brian Thomas Jr. and it was Terrion Arnold. So they passed on Terrion. They didn't have the cornerback. Monteric Brown played admirably this year, but he's not someone you want to start. So I view him more as, the guy who fills in when maybe Tyson's hurt. So you need someone opposite of that. Ronald Darby's not the answer. Will Johnson's the obvious pick. Now, the other person it could come down to here as well could be Tetsuo McMillan. Now, I think this is a little less likely just because Gabe Davis is locked up for another year. I highly doubt Trent Baalke makes a proactive move to get off that contract because he's too afraid to admit his wrongdoings. He's incapable of that, in fact. So you're going to end up not having anywhere in the wide receiver room to add someone. But with that said, McMillan is someone who has incredible size. I mean, phenomenal. It's 6'5". He's basically a Mike Evans clone in the way he plays. And so, is the value there for that type of player? Yeah. Is he the type of player that Trent Baalke might like? I think so. I just don't think that's a place where he'll add because it would force him to say, hey, made a mistake on this other guy. Now, your other options here, Mason Graham, I don't know if he'll meet like length thresholds for him. Ashton Genty's probably too rich at number 5. I already gave my thoughts on Abdul Carter. Probably not any of these other players that are available here. So I would say at this point, Will Johnson's kind of the obvious player for Jacksonville. It's a very good fit for him. And I would honestly be shocked if this isn't the pick unless we see maybe a free agency move to set them up with like a Charvarius Ward or DJ Reed, a player like that. So it's going to be Will Johnson at number 5. Now, number 6, you got the Raiders. And if you're the Raiders, you're just screwed in this situation. Let's be honest. You didn't get your quarterback. You had no opportunity to trade up. And now you're in a spot where what can you really do, right? All you can do is add talent to the roster for the day when you actually finally full-on tank, complete the tank, and have the top pick. So what do they need? A wide receiver, I don't see much on this team at this point. I mean, you got Trey Tucker. I like Trey Tucker, but he's not like a wide receiver 1 or anything like that. Jacoby Myers, he's a solid player. I'm not sure if he's someone who'll be there for a long time, though. I think his guarantees probably run up pretty soon because this was, I think, his second year with the Raiders. So you need a wide receiver 1. And Tetairoa McMillan, I think, is a phenomenal fit for them. And I think it's someone kind of fits what they've done in the sense that they've taken a lot of very safe, high-floor players in the draft and guys who have really worked out and have also had high ceilings. You look at their picks last year starting out, you had Brock Bowers in the first round, and then you had Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round. Both of those picks are home runs, right? Even though you can sit there and say, damn, you wish they got a quarterback, these were still incredible picks for this team. These are guys who should be around with that team for a very long time as a crucial piece. So I think Tetairoa McMillan's another player that could be like that, just a very safe pick, someone who would make a lot of sense if you can't get a quarterback, but you're kind of doomed in the situation because you need that quarterback to have some success and to really keep your job if you're Antonio Pierce. So it is going to be Tetairoa McMillan here, but I think it's just worth saying this is not the ideal situation. So pick number 7, New York Jets on the board. For me, this came down to Mason Graham and Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is a better player. To me, he's the guy I would take personally. But you look at the defensive line for the Jets, you're going to lose Hassan Reddick, which is worth mentioning. But you do have Jermaine Johnson on one side. You have Will McDonald on the other. On the interior, you have an incredible player in Quinnen Williams. Unfortunately, you don't have another guy to go along with it. And you don't have someone who can really help against the run there. And they really just struggled in general against that this year. So could you use another great interior defensive lineman to really finish this thing off? I think you could. I think there's a stronger argument to go after that kind of position. So to me, I don't think any of these other players really fit as far as need. Ashton Genty, you're not going to get. You got Breece Hall. Starks would be rich. Tackle, I don't think you're doing that. You just got Fashanu. So this is pretty easily Mason Graham for me. Now getting to pick number 8, this is probably my favorite pick. Easy pick. You're excited if you're a Panthers fan because you got the second best player in the draft falling to you. He's a need. He's someone who would immediately improve this defensive line, and that's Abdul Carter. This is easy, guys. I mean, not really much thought has to go into that. He is a phenomenal pass rusher. He gets the Micah Parsons comp for very fair reasons. And I really think that he's going to have that type of successful career and be that kind of name that you're going to know for a long time in the NFL. So, Carolina, You sit at number 8, you wait to see who comes available, and you get one of the best players in the class. Now, with the Saints, this is the first pick for me that kind of goes into that second tier of this class, where it's not really like the elite blue chip names, but it is a very good player. And that's Nick Scourton at Texas A&M. He's been a really good power rusher this year. I think he's just been in a better situation, playing in position. Like to see that. And someone I think that could be a very good player for a long time. And you look at some of these other names available, I think that he's probably the best player for the Saints. I think he probably fits schematically as well. Now, we'll see what the Saints do, who they get at head coach. It'll probably be Aaron Glenn, would be my bet. If it's Aaron Glenn, he might be taking over the scheme from Detroit, and I think that Nick Scourton might fit that a little bit better than what our next option would have been, which is James Pierce Jr. So I think he's just a better overall player. I think he's a good fit for what they want to do, and I think it's a position they're going to need. So Scourton's going to be the pick here at number 9. Now, number 10, I wanted to go with Will Campbell originally, but the Chicago Bears, honestly, you look at their offensive line, they have tackle figure. It's the interior that's a problem. And are you going to address the interior at number 10? I don't think you're going to do that. I think you're going to sit there and maybe wait till that second round pick, and I guess you have 2 of them, because you got the Carolina pick, and you're going to go out and try to get someone who can be an impact then. That could be a Tyler Booker, that could be an Emory Jones Jr. falling down the board. There's a lot of other options. Savanaya. You'll have a lot of players that you can take. I think for the Bears, you look at players who could fit the upside of this pick. They make an impact and fill needs here. I think to me, the more obvious player here, and someone who's, I guess he doesn't get mocked this high most of the time, but has a ton of potential, is Kenneth Grant. This is someone who, he's a huge nose tackle on the defensive line, but he's someone who moves phenomenal for that. He is a good football player with a lot of upside to develop. I think he's going to be someone who can immediately make an impact for you against the run in that division, and has the upside of being a pass rusher at that size. That's a player I'd get excited about. He just obviously, like a lot of these teams here, are going to wish you could take these players maybe a little bit later, but it's kind of just the way this draft falls. So that's going to be the pick at number 10. Number 11 for the 49ers. I said at number 10 I want to take tackle because they have players who are going to be pretty clearly the future at that position. The 49ers also have their tackles for now. However, Trent Williams is older, and McKivitz, I believe, has 1 more year left on his deal. He's probably going to get more on the next one after that, and this is not a team that's going to have a ton of cap space. So what does it make sense to do? Well, go get a guy like Will Campbell. And I think he'll probably be the first tackle off the board. I think he's someone you could bring in, have play maybe at a guard spot the first year, and then have that long-term plan to kick him out to tackle. If you look at Trent Williams, he's going to be, I think, 37 this year, so it's very possible that he'll be retiring soon, because you're not going to play well for that much longer from that point. Not that he doesn't have any more time in him, but it's going to be coming to an end eventually. You want to have a plan. You're not going to pick this high often if you're the 49ers, so get a safe prospect that is going to fill a spot in your offensive line and do it well. So that's our pick at number 11. Now, number 12, I think this is just going to be something we know. Who knows technically what happens? A lot of things can happen on draft day. But the 49ers, the Cowboys need a running back, right? They've been linked to Ashton Genty a ton. He wants to go there. He's a Texas guy. I think it makes a lot of sense for Dallas to take him. I think this is really good value at number 12 as well, even for a running back, because Genty is that type of player. He is a phenomenal for the Boise State Broncos. There was now, because he's not playing any more games there, but I think he's going to be awesome in the NFL. And I think if you're the Cowboys, is this the biggest position of need? Not necessarily. it is a need, but this is the player you're going to be happy you took for the next almost decade, I would say. So Ashton Jeanty is going to be the pick at number 12. Getting to number 13. This is not something I would have done a couple days ago, but Tyreek Hill has decided that he's done with Miami, seemingly just kind of on a whim. It really just leaves you in a spot. We got Jalen Waddle. I think they got Malik Washington from last year's class as well. So that's someone that they're going to have to, maybe plan to have on their team in the future. But he's a later pick, right? It's not someone you invested a ton of draft capital into. So I think you could look at a player to replace Tyreek Hill here the best you can. And to me, with the receivers on the board, it probably is going to be Luther Bird in the third. Now, I could make a strong case for why Emeka Egbuka could go here as well. I think he's going to outperform where he goes in the draft. But Luther Bird in the third has a ton of upside. He's a fast player as well. Tough player after the catch. Gets a lot of Deebo Samuel comps for good reasons. I think he would make a lot of sense as a pick for the Dolphins here. And just the way they operate and where they invest and the things they value. I think they're going to value what Burden's able to offer, and I could really see them making another wide receiver selection in this draft. So that's where we're going to go with this pick. Could have also been offensive line, but it's not something they've really done a ton with. They also just got Patrick Paul last year, so that could be their tackle of the future to eventually replace Teron Armstead. Now, getting number 14 with the Colts. This is an easy one for me. Anything I hear from Colts fans is we want a tight end, and they're not really confident with how things have gone there. You've got your pick of some really good players here. Tyler Warren, I've got to revisit him and move him up my rankings, but he's just been incredible for Penn State. Just a guy that literally can do it all. It's not just talking about tight end responsibilities either. Someone who's played center, he's even taken quarterback snaps, lined up as a receiver. He's done everything you could ask of. So, is Tyler Warren going to be a guy that makes sense for the Colts? I absolutely think that. I also think comparing him to Colston Loveland, I think Warren makes more sense for the Colts because they do value blocking from their tight ends. You look at Mo Alley Cox, for example, a player that's been well known for his blocking ability. I think that's something you want to replace in part. So who makes sense here? It's going to be Tyler Warren at number 14 for the Colts. Now, 15 for the Falcons. We're going to do what they should have done years ago. And we're going to take a pass rusher here. Now, James Pierce Jr. is going to be the pick. Your other options that you have here, just to talk about them, Mykel Williams. It seems to me like he's probably a player who goes earlier than I have him mocked right now. I was looking at odds for the first overall pick, and he's listed on them. He's like one of the top 5 or 10 guys. Just crazy. Because for me, Mykel, he's got a ton of upside, but he's not someone who played the whole year. He's not someone who's really put his whole game together at this point. But apparently the NFL, I think, is probably going to value him a lot higher than what I do. So could he have been the pick here? It's possible. It really is. But I think looking at these players, you got Shamar Stewart as well. He's more developmental, but really good against the run right now. The other guy would be in the mix is Mike Green, but it's more of like a size concern for him, I'd say. I think he's better against the run than what James Pierce Jr. is, but I think you have a little more upside from James Pierce Jr. I think the size translates a little bit better. I think that's a player that the Falcons would really like at number 15 to finally address a major need for that team. Now, number 16, this could have been Mykel Williams as well. I ended up going with Jalen Walker here. The reason why for the Cardinals, you look at their front seven for their defense, they don't really have great names anywhere. Or I guess I'll put it like this: there's no clear position of strength. You have some players, right? You got Darius Robinson, for example. You trade for Baron Browning, B.J. Ojulari. He's a player I really like. Liked him back in the 2020, was it 2023 draft class? I believe it was. Someone I would have liked for Jacksonville to get at some point. He goes to the Cardinals, and unfortunately, I believe he tears his ACL in 2024, doesn't play for the team. So it's an unfortunate situation, but you have needs all over. Linebacker is another one. And I think you can use a player who could really move around at a lot of these positions and play. Not defensive tackle, of course, but Walker's someone who can play linebacker. He can play outside linebacker. He can rush the passer. He's going to help you get more pressure and improve what is not really a great defense at getting to the quarterback. So Jalen Walker will be the pick for me for that reason. Now, we got 2 more picks here. I think these are kind of simple. You look at the Bengals, you look at their secondary specifically. I think when you look at safety, Geno Stone hasn't been that great. He doesn't have any guarantees left at this point either. Jordan Battle didn't really play that well this year. You have your choice of really anyone you want at this point. I know safeties don't get valued a ton, but Malachi Starks is someone that we hear a lot of great things about. He's a guy with a ton of upside. Safety one for a lot of people. I think at this point pretty much is for me too. I think he would be a very logical pick here to add to a position of need. They need help on defense, and I think it's an area they could absolutely use someone, especially considering with the Bengals, as much as the defensive line hasn't done as much as you like, they still have clear investments on the defensive line. Right? They just put in a pick with Chris Jenkins. You got Trey Hendrickson. You got Sam Hubbard. You got other players there as well. I think B.J. Hill's the other one. You have players. I think the secondary is more of where they need to be looking. So we'll go with Malachi Starks there. Number 18 for Seattle. This team had some really unfortunate offensive line problems. They did draft Christian Haynes, which I was a fan of for them. I think that's going to be a good pick for them in the long run. But they lost some players. Damian Lewis was one of them. Charles Cross played really good for them at tackle. They don't really have anyone opposite of him. Connor Williams also played center for them this year, retired mid-season. You don't really see that often. It's just a mess on the offensive line. So you need a tackle or a guard, which you could really put into play here. I would be fine taking Tyler Booker at this point. I don't think that's a bad pick for Seattle. But at this point, as much as it would be that or Josh Simmons, who would be my top player left at this point, I think Kelvin Banks Jr. will probably be viewed as the second tackle in this class and be the pick for the Seattle Seahawks. So we'll take him at number 18. AI will play the rest of this out, so we're not picking 19 through 32. But wanted to turn that on at least so you could see the draft card with the first 18 picks. So that's what we got here. We'll wrap this up just going back through. We have the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward. Browns take quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Giants taking quarterback Jalen Milroe. Patriots taking cornerback and wide receiver Travis Hunter. Jacksonville taking cornerback Will Johnson. Raiders taking wide receiver Tetrell McMillan. Mason Graham to the Jets. Abdul Carter to the Panthers. Nick Scourton to the Saints. Kenneth Grant to the Bears. Will Campbell to the 49ers. Ashton Genty to the Cowboys. Luther Burden III to the Dolphins. Tyler Warren to the Colts. James Pierce Jr. to the Falcons. Jalen Walker to the Cardinals. Malachi Starks to the Bengals. And Kelvin Banks Jr. to the Seattle Seahawks. So that's what we got here. Would love to hear your thoughts on these players, where you would take them. Once again, this is predictive for me, the best I can do it right now. I do have some players I've still got to watch that are probably going to have a shot to go first round. Guys like Jahdae Barron, for example, or Trey Amos. So I'm going to finish that up this week, hopefully. Get my big board all ready for the Senior Bowl. But would love to hear your thoughts on where things stand and kind of how you see this first round playing out. So with that said, I want to thank our channel members really quick. Premier Seer 904, Mr. Dolphin, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Brian Foster. Appreciate y'all guys. Appreciate y'all watching this video. Once again, apologize for the sickness and the coughing. I pray to God it ends sometime, but this is like the 11th day I've been dealing with it, so We'll see. Eventually it'll be over. But with that said, thank you all for coming here, watching this video. Let me know your thoughts. And finally, go Jags.